Great. So, as Kevin said, my name is Bryan Hogan. I am a blogger, a podcaster, a Microsoft MVP. I've been blogging for quite some time. And a little while ago, someone was asking me, why are you doing it? And I was I have lots of reasons, but it would be nice to share them as part of a talk. And this is going to be, a bit of a talk, but also I would like some back and forths with people because, I did this at a code camp a few weeks ago in Boston, and it turned into quite a bit of a discussion with people and asking questions, giving their own reasons for why they blog and the like. So I'm hoping you'll join in. I won't be keeping an eye on the chat. Kev, if you don't mind keeping an eye on the chat, but I'd invite people to just come off the mute and take part. So, and I'll first thing, straight out to people, who here already has a blog? If anyone wants to chime in. And Kev does. Anybody else have a blog? All right, then, Kev, why did you start your blog since you're the only person who's coming forward?
I guess it's just problems that I kind of faced and solved, and I couldn't find them anywhere else, so I just published them online. And then normally I end up like going back and searching the same thing and ended up writing my own blog post.
Yeah. Actually, I had similar experiences. And then who wants to have a blog? And I'm hoping someone will say they do, because that's what we're going to be talking about for the next, 45 minutes.
I do, yeah. I'm looking into it actually somewhat.
Have you started already, Stefan, or you're?
No, not really. I'm gathering ideas and yeah.
And why do you want to have a blog?
I wrote once for the JetBrains annotated newsletter. I wrote like a little bit, just a couple of sentences, and that was fun. And I like writing technical content, obviously, and I want more of it. But now I need some platform. That's the toughest question.
When you say a platform, you mean sort of what to write about, or a technical blogging platform, or
I guess an own. I would like to have an own site or an own representation, but I'm entirely uncertain how this should look like and how hard I should overkill it.
Yeah, I have some suggestions I'll get to, but anybody else who has a blog or wants to have a blog want to chime in with what they've done or why they want to do something?
I always feel I should start one as a way of practicing technical writing and getting thoughts in order, but I never quite managed to get going with it.
What's holding you back?
I think for me it's topics, and the times where I think, oh, this would make a great blog, are times where I'm not actually considering it, and the times where I'm thinking, oh, I should have a go at it, are times where I can't think of any topics.
Yeah, I have some suggestions on that too. Anybody else want to chime in before I move on to the next slide?
Yeah. So yeah, I've not got one currently, but I'd like to start doing it. But yeah, I think the main two reasons of that are kind of, again, like Kev was saying, kind of solving problems and then wanting to kind of record that and share that knowledge. Then also just because it seems like quite a good thing to kind of have under your tool belt, kind of from a career perspective and stuff as well. And it's quite a good skill to develop from that standpoint, kind of.
And what's holding
your writing stuff?
What's holding you back from starting it?
In reality, nothing.
No, I mean, I'm not judging or anything.
I think it's one of those. It's just knowing where to get started, and actually just having the confidence to put something out there.
Yeah. So let me come back to my slide. So why I started this I can trace this back to a very specific incident and a company. There was a discussion going on around a technical C# aspect. It doesn't really matter what. And one of my colleagues went, oh, blah, 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 therefore, yada, yada, yada. And it was kind of, wow, he knows that. I don't know that. That's something I should know. And so obviously I kind of felt, I didn't say anything at the time, but it really kind of clicked with me that I was in this passive learning state. So I took up C# in about 2004, and I was very active learning it for a number of years. And then I felt comfortable with it. I felt I was good at it. And I kind of sat on my laurels and said, yeah, I can get the jobs, I can do the things. And then this one little incident kind of made me realize I haven't kept up. I have not been an active learner. I'm falling behind, because clearly this guy knows this relatively straightforward thing I didn't know. So I switched to what I refer to as active learning. I started attending meetups and code camps in the Boston area. I'd go to maybe 4 meetups a month. And, maybe 1 or 2 of them would be good and 2 of them would be okay, or they might be poor. But I'd still meet people, and I was building relationships, and I'd still start to find out something out of it. I had a lot of spare time back then. And then I started, going, well, I can figure out things and I can write those down, and I can't find those answers elsewhere. So, you'd go on to some particular problem in C# or .NET, you'd have to Google around, you'd find a bit of an answer here and a bit of an answer there and a bit of it over here. And I said, you know what, I can bring those things together, and that would be of benefit. And I'm probably going to hit this problem in the future. So if I write it down in a way that someone else can understand it, my future self will understand it. And if I have to write about it at a level that's going to be beneficial to someone, I'm going to have to learn it a little bit deeper than I need. So not just the Stack Overflow answer, copy paste, it works. It's kind of, how does it work? Is this not necessarily the best way, but is this a good way of solving that problem? I'm very much against the best blog, the best solution. It's good enough is good enough for a lot of these things. And I have this sort of idea that has built up over time about, people that attend meetups, people that go to code camps. And I say it to the developers I work with, that, you can be better than 90% of developers without a huge amount of effort. So if you switch from passive learning to active learning, and I'm going to guess most of you have, because you're at meetups, you're trying to improve your knowledge after 5 o'clock. That's a great position to be in, because a lot of developers, and I absolutely do not think this is a problem in any way, a lot of developers are 9 to 5. It's their job. It's not their hobby. They're not interested in, learning the next technology, and that's fine. I have no problem with that. But then, your skills somewhat stay at a level. Moving to active learning and then on to blogging forces you into learning more, and it becomes this sort of self-fulfilling cycle. You learn something, so you write about it, and you're writing about stuff, so it makes you want to learn something to write about. And then the other thing, another good reason to do it, is that it builds your reputation, and I think Ben mentioned that. And this can make it easier getting a job. You've got effectively a portfolio, and it should be relatively high quality, again, because if you've written it so that someone else can understand it, it's got to be good. You've got to be able to download the code, press F5. And actually, that's another reason I started a blog. There were blogs I was reading back in the 10 years ago, and they would have a snippet of code. You couldn't download it, you couldn't run it, you didn't know what using statements, you didn't know what libraries, what versions. So yeah, the blogger claimed to have solved the problem, but you couldn't actually use it. And that annoyed me. So I said, all right, my blog is going to have full working solutions where applicable. I mean, there's a small percentage where it is, just a few lines of code, because that's really all there is to it. I don't provide a zip file in that case. Another good reason, to do the blogging is that it sometimes helps you skip technical interviews. People will look at your blog and go, yeah, that person's good enough. So those are the primary reasons that I got into blogging, the reputation, self-learning. This is for the people who are considering blogging. Get your own domain. And I'll say it again, get your own domain. Don't start on some other domain, because at some point you're going to realize you like it. And then you're going to have this content on some other hosting platform, whatever it is. And it's going to be your first name and last name .somecompany.com. And now your content is split between that place and then bringing it onto your own domain. So domains cost $20 a year or something. Even if blogging doesn't work out for you, do that first. Don't skip it. Get your own domain. I recommend not using the big blogging organizations out there. I won't name any of them, but the ones where you can write something in Markdown and it'll be hosted by somebody else, but it'll be your content beside 50, 100 other people, 1,000 other people, and you'll get your claps or your praise, and then they'll be on to the next article. It doesn't help you build your reputation. Your content doesn't stand out. It won't really be noticed. And I'm very much against that. Those things didn't exist when I started, but I can see people who go down that road and then they're kind of caught. A lot of people wonder about what they should write about. And when I started off, I was wondering that myself, what will I cover? And it became pretty easy for me to figure it out what I should write about. So if I Google something and I can't find an answer that is right there, clear and explained, and it takes me, let's say, half an hour to figure it out, well, then it's probably going to take someone else half an hour as well. And maybe it won't take everyone half an hour. Maybe other people will figure it out in 5 minutes. But I view myself as a pretty good proxy for an average developer. And if it takes me a while, it's going to take someone else a while. Therefore, it is worth putting it there. My very first post was on No Dog My Blog at bryanhogan.net. I was using a blogging platform that came with the domain registrar, a very simple blogging platform, but it didn't support indented code samples. So I figured out how to do that, and that actually became my first blog. So it's an example of something that is probably not much use to a lot of people or most people, but it solved a problem that wasn't documented anywhere else. And that is the case with the vast majority of my blogs. If you go onto my blog, you'll kind of go, oh yeah, I knew how to do that. Or you go, oh no, actually Microsoft wrote about that. And I'll say, yeah, maybe it might be in the middle of a 20-page document, or it might be spread out across 5 different documents, or it might be on a bit of a Stack Overflow and a bit of a something else. But I actually brought it together for you. So I don't think you need to write content that is 100% unique, but you have to bring it together into something that's useful for people. And again, think about it. If it took you half an hour or an hour pulling from most of those sources, it's taking all those other people that same length of time. So why not just write it down? So a lot of people, I think, struggle with how to write. And it takes time to kind of build your own style. So I like to keep my topic very, very simple. So again, if you go onto my blog, they're about one thing. There's kind of one problem, and there's a relatively straightforward answer, hopefully. I'm not going to go into a blog about containers, for example, because containers is an enormous topic. But I might have an example of how to use memcached with .NET 6 running with memcached in a Docker container and then .NET 6, because that's a very specific thing. So I'm not trying to boil the ocean. I'm not trying to solve a massive problem. It's just one thing. But if you do want to have a larger thing, I strongly suggest breaking it into multiple parts. And the reason for that is one person might be interested in the early part of it. Another person might be interested in the middle. Another person might be interested in the end. If you give it to a person, if you give it content out as one really long blog post, the benefit and the usefulness is lost in that large content. Split it up into 3 or 4 useful parts. Another big one, I'm a big advocate for, is provide source code that works, and 100% of the source code. And I would suggest not putting it on GitHub, because then people will just go to your GitHub and not come to your blog. You want to bring people to your blog because it's not just a code, you're hopefully explaining it. If you're solving something that's got an error, and I have quite a lot of my blogs are I've hit this exact error, include that text very much in your blog, and then also potentially in the title, because someone's going to Google for that particular error, and if it's in your blog title, you become very high up the Google index. Again, these are kind of my styles and my suggestions. I like short posts that are very much to the point. It's my style. You need to develop your own. You might want more flowery language. You might want to, express yourself in different ways, and do that. Do whatever you enjoy. Don't try to twist yourself into somebody else's style. They're already doing that. That's fine. And I do this with my podcast as well. I listen to other people's podcasts. I don't try to change my style to match theirs. I don't want to do that. I have developed my own style. Some people like it, other people don't. That's okay. It will be the same with blogging. Some people will like the way you write and some people won't. But if you don't enjoy the way you write, it is going to be a lot harder. So I was writing technical blogs for another party, and I had to very much change how I wrote. And I struggled with it. And what I ended up doing was actually writing it in my own style so that I would get the content done, and then I would change it subsequently to their style. But I couldn't get the words on the page unless it was in my own style. Again, another thing I strongly suggest is writing clearly. And by that, I mean good grammar, good spelling. Put it through something like Grammarly. That will catch a lot of things. Anything where you've got serious typos puts a person off. It distracts them. They get annoyed. They might leave, or they might not get, they become annoyed with the content and they might lose the meaning and the message. And again, Grammarly is free. Put it through Grammarly or Pro Writing Aid or some tool to clean it up. And then the big one is don't get bogged down with trying to make your posts perfect. Good enough on something that hasn't been written about elsewhere is adding to the content out there. I have friends who have blog domains registered, but they're afraid to write because it might not be perfect. Or they spend an excruciating amount of time checking if their solution is correct. Is it perfect? Is it just right? Will anyone criticize it? Will anyone find it wrong? It's okay. It's okay to be wrong. I've had people comment and give me suggestions where I've made mistakes. It's fine. I add it to the content. I fix it later. You can always go back and change it. And you still might be helping somebody, because even if you're not 100% right, maybe that 80% gets the person to the answer that they want. It's okay. So do not get bogged down with that. Anyone have any comments, questions, suggestions, feedback, opinions? Because again, I want this to be interactive. It's easier in a classroom because I can see everyone who kind of wants to kind of say something. It's harder here.
You mentioned using Grammarly. Is there any other tools that you use?
That was the main one. In a different scenario where I wasn't allowed to use Grammarly, I was using Pro Writing Aid, but that comes with a license. There are probably other ones out there, but I've been using Grammarly for a year or so now, or maybe 2, and it's fine for my purposes. Word is okay. I don't know. Anybody else using tools like that?
Somebody posted ChatGPT in the chat.
Sure. All right, the blogging platform. So this was asked at the meetup and earlier today. So there are plenty of them out there. The big recommendation is use something that takes advantage of Markdown. Don't go with a proprietary system where the content ends up in a database. You can have problems with database storage mechanisms. So like I wrote this long blog post about how I moved away from WordPress at some point. There's a lot in there explaining the kind of the pitfalls of using proprietary systems where you rely on significant infrastructure that's behind it. Now, you're going to rely on infrastructure anyway, but at least if your content is in Markdown, it is easy to edit. It's easy to migrate. Migrating away from WordPress to Markdown was an enormous amount of work. So beware. Markdown, definitely the way to go. And then your blogging platform will be made up of about 3 parts, let's say. So mine is, I have the blogging engine. So that's the application that hosts the blog logic, the infrastructure. In my case, that's Hugo. There are other ones out there, Jekyll and Ghost and a few others. I liked Hugo. I started with it. it kind of clicked with me. I tried Jekyll, I tried Ghost, and for whatever reason, I just felt much more comfortable in Hugo. And I can run it on Windows and Linux. So I can run it locally, update my blogs, run it, look at the content locally on my browser, see what it looks like before I even get to the point of deploying it to my hosting company. So for people who don't know, sorry, the likes of Jekyll and Ghost and Hugo, what they do is they take your content that's written in Markdown and then they merge it with themes, effectively skins for your blog. And then the themes, that becomes the next thing that you'd be interested in. There's a website, I can provide the links to you, Kev, at the end, called themes.gohugo.io. There are hundreds of themes out there. Some are very flowery and pretty, some are very simple. Some support syntax highlighting as part of the theme. Hugo itself has its own way of supporting syntax highlighting. So that becomes obviously a big deal for the likes of us. You want to be able to display code in a color-coded way with indentation, potentially with line numbers, depending on how you want to talk about your code. And for me, Hugo had that combination of features and the theme I use. So source code highlighting is it is a big deal. Don't get caught with a theme you love that doesn't support these things. Or if you're more on the mathematical side, some of them support mathematical notation. Some do, some don't. So you need to be cognizant of that. So far you have the platform, which is Hugo, and you've got themes. And then the final thing is hosting. I use a company called Netlify. They will take my Hugo content with my own blogs, with my theme, and deploy it to their CDN and servers around the world. And they'll do it for free. They now manage my domains. So bryanhogan.net is managed by Netlify. They then reach into my GitHub repository, take my most recent pull request, deploy it on a preview branch, and deploy that around the world on a preview URL. I can see what it looks like. If I'm happy with it, I can then merge back to main or master with my changes once I'm happy, and off it goes into the production. And it is free for about 100 gigabytes of traffic per month, or approximately 250,000 page views per month is what they estimate. And that's a lot. So like my blog gets about 1 million page views a year. So I am nowhere near the limits, and I'm paying $0 for this. It is, in my experience, pretty robust. There have definitely been times when they've had outages, but they primarily affect my ability to deploy, not the ability of people to see the site. So, I might be in the middle of writing a blog, I'm trying to preview a deploy, something goes wrong, there's an error, it's kind of, okay, they will fix it. I'm confident of that. When I was using WordPress by a hosting company, not by WordPress themselves, when something went wrong, I had to fix it. A process would get stuck, a database would fail. I had to go in and get in touch with customer support. Forget about that stuff. Go with Netlify or one of the other big hosters that just take your source code repository, build it, deploy it, CDN it, manage it. Netlify, I'm very happy with it. Another big thing I would strongly recommend is provide a search mechanism on your blog so that people can find stuff or find your posts. But it's also going to be good for you because, I remember, I wrote something about Redis at some point. Now I tag all my posts with the primary things, but I also have that search. You can use internal searches with Hugo, as in it will be part of the theme and the Hugo platform, or you can use external searches that hook into your Hugo theme. I don't have a strong recommendation on either. I think as your content grows, the external ones probably become a little bit better. You may end up having to pay. Anyone have any questions or experience or any comments about the hosting and the platforms and stuff? No? All righty. Oops. So getting people to read it, I don't have a lot of knowledge on that. I think good titles, good tagging on your blogs, and then a fast site. So I noticed when I switched away from WordPress hosted by a third party, my blog posts would take, 2.5 seconds to load. And they were still pretty high up in the Google ranking. But when I switched to Netlify, the things load in, a few tenths of a second. They're almost there immediately. And my content on the Google and search results went up and up and up. And for some things, I mean, obviously I know what to search for to find my own stuff, but it's pretty high up there. So being fast, being a clean site, not having a lot of JavaScript or a lot of other issues will get you on that. Another thing is get on the blog aggregators. So there's the Daily Brew and the Morning Dew. You can submit your RSS feed to them. And sometimes you'll be picked for presentation on their list of, good blogs of the week or good blogs of the day. Sometimes you will, sometimes you won't. But they're a good way to get some notice and get some links coming back to your site. And then obviously having very good content that's relevant and solves problems for people is the main thing. And, again, if it's a problem that you've had, you can be sure somebody else has probably had that problem too. And then the hard part, I guess, is keeping at it. It's a lot of people start blogging or they start podcasting and then they stop. It can be a challenge at first. It is time consuming. You'll worry, is it good enough? Is it right? Does it look good? But I would say just get started, keep at it, build up that following, find your voice. That's a big one. Being comfortable writing and not worrying about what you've written. I've written it, I'm happy with it, it's good enough, put it out there. That is the hardest thing. For me, I in a sense, it came kind of naturally and easily. I don't know why. I enjoyed it right from the start. I was able to put out blog posts probably every few weeks at first. And then some weeks I put out 2 or 3 blog posts. It just becomes this thing I enjoy doing. And it becomes, and sometimes even a compulsion. There's something I'll be thinking about. I need to write that down. I need to write it down. I need to get it out of me. And the blog becomes that outlet. And I'm afraid we are at the end, simply because I had this, as I say, I had done this talk as a much more interactive one in person. So that is all I have on getting started. So I'm happy to, chat and we can talk about things now if anyone has comments or questions or suggestions.
I've got a question which feeds in very nicely to the interactivity thing. So apologies if you actually mentioned this. I had to go to my door at one point. Have you had much value from having comments on the blog? Because I've seen the full spectrum of, some have awful comments and some lock it down and some, have great ones.
Yeah, I've had mixed. So when I had the WordPress blog, I had a blogging plugin, which all it wanted was your first name and a comment, and that was it. And I got a load of comments, and they were generally positive. There were a lot of thank yous. There were some corrections. There was, I think, in the 7 or 8 years I was using WordPress, I think I got 2 abusive comments. One was definitely directed at me, and one might have just been a more general abuse. Now with the new blog, I don't have that ability to have a plugin, so I use Discuss. But Discuss, even though there is a feature on it to allow a person to comment without signing in, I have that turned on. People don't realize, and they don't comment nearly as much. I'd say my comments have gone down from 100 to 10 in over whatever period of time. An enormous difference. People don't want to sign in to Discuss, even though they don't need to. They think they have to. The content has, again, it's pretty much stayed the same. It's good comments, it's good feedback, the occasional spam, and the occasional bit of abuse. But I would, if I could find a better way of having having comments, I would love to have it on the site, because I think there'd be more interaction.
Okay, cool. That's interesting.
Yeah. Anyone else? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
There's a comment in the chat saying, what do you feel about adding videos into blog posts?
I've done a tiny bit of it, but it was more for a demonstration of something I had coded up where the easiest way to show it was a video. They're large, so they're going to slow down your page. Be careful with your hosting. They might have some limits about how much content you can actually allow to pull across from GitHub. I haven't hit those limits, but it would be something to consider. It might be better to put it on YouTube and then embed it so that it comes across from some other hosting provider.
Someone's got their hand up. Wazel, is that how you say it? Sorry if I pronounced it wrong.
Yes, I have a question. As you know, all that the technology and development field has a numerous of topics. Then shall we define a context for our blog? For example, if I'm writing different topics in several areas, like something like Terraform or ASP.NET, and so shall the blog have a unified or unique identity or context, or is it will affect the blog visits that we introduce like various topics in various technologies, and how to deal with such thing?
Sure. I think write about whatever you're interested in and whatever problem you're trying to solve. I don't think it matters whether it's Terraform or Entity Framework or ASP.NET or whatever, because the vast majority of the traffic that comes to my site is either from Google or Bing, or what's referred to as direct traffic. And my interpretation of direct traffic is Google or Bing, but where people are blocking referrers. They're not letting me see the referrer site. So I would say write about everything that's of use to you, because it's going to be a search that ends up presenting it to the person anyway.
Yeah.
And I suppose would that be where having good search functionality and stuff on the site and things would probably help as well, and potentially like dividing it up into categories by tags, or allowing people to search by tags and things if you've got a variety of content that people might be interested in a subset.
Yeah. And then related, so one of the features on the theme I'm using is that in any blog post at the bottom of it, there'll be related content. Now, I don't know how much people jump around because I don't have that deep analytical information logging, but that gives a person an idea. Oh, you've written, it's smart enough to know this topic was tagged with Web API and Entity Framework. So it's going to give you 6 other blog posts on that, and that might jump you across. But yeah, the search mechanism is, I think, very important for your own purposes and for the people that are coming to you. And the tagging really helps, because, I find that, I want to tell someone about all the stuff I've written on Entity Framework. I simply send them the URL with a tag Entity Framework, and then they can see everything. So has anybody decided they want to write a blog now, that it's not, there's a path to getting started? It's, not necessarily easy, but it's not impossible? I'll take that silence as yes. Everyone wants to get a blog started right now, and it's going to be easy.
There's a few nodding heads.
Nice. Are there any other comments? I can't. I don't know where to.
There's one more question saying, would you recommend cross-posting articles to other platforms?
I don't know. I would say from the perspective of building your own brand, you might be better off keeping the content on your own. And actually on that topic, that's where I worry a little bit about those AI tools that are out there that are potentially sucking in your content and then providing it out through, chat mechanisms. I'm going slightly off topic. So I like to keep my stuff for me, and I do write for other blogs, as Neil's asking the question. I also write for Twilio, but I don't cross post the stuff I write for Twilio on my own blog or my own stuff on their blog. Actually, Niels, do you want to come on and tell us your opinion on that, if you can?
Sure. Hello, this is Niels. So I used to cross post, but I think it's quite a lot of effort to cross post because like you gotta copy and paste all of the content into some other platform. But I would say like if you do it, the most important thing is that you set your canonical tags on those platforms. And if you what a canonical tag is like it's a meta tag that's inside of the head of the HTML page, and it will hold the URL of where the original canonical content is, and that will go back to your own website. And that's a way to tell Google and other search engines, hey, this is where the real article is hosted. Do not index the other URLs. And so otherwise, those other block platforms would benefit, from yours through search engines. So that way, everything is still going through to your personal website for search engines, but you're still able to like jump into other people's feeds, if that makes sense.
So that's the benefit then, the feeds being on other people's feeds is the benefit? Okay.
Yeah, if other people use like dev.to or, they like to be part of some other communities, then that might appear in their feed. And but I have kind of stopped doing it because I noticed the amount of views that those generate are not sufficient for the effort that I have to put into cross post.
And actually then, Niels, you and I at some point, we were chatting a bit about things like social media. So I think you're more knowledgeable, or significantly more knowledgeable on that, the benefits of, posting on Twitter or wherever for the perspective of getting page views.
Yeah, I think search engines are your primary source of traffic, but sharing it to social media can definitely help. And I do think that Google takes it as a signal that if your content gets posted more often to social media and gets more engagements, Google will see that, and other search engines will see that as like one metric to value how valuable your blog posts are and whatnot. And it might appear in other sections of the Google platform, like Google Now. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. That's like for people that have Android phones and you have certain Google apps. Google Now might push content into your phone, or like show a push notification, like more like a silent push notification. But that way your content gets more discoverable. There's also Google Discover and other things. I think those are based on like how much traffic is actually going to this post, and they try to show trending topics.
Can you share, I don't know, Niels, if you can or you can't, the traffic sources for the blogs that you're, managing? Is it search engines? Is it direct traffic, or what is it?
Yeah, it would mostly be search engines, I think. Let me look.
Yeah. So that goes back to my point that, picking a good title for what you're writing about with, it's entity framework, it's this, it's that, it's doing, I don't know, a post with HTTP client. That's actually oddly one of my most popular blog posts. You would think it's relatively simple, and yet it has been consistently in the top 3 blog posts for the last 3 years, because it isn't that easy unless you already know how to do it. And that's, it's purely Google search that brings that up.
Yeah, a lot of Bryan's articles on Twilio are very popular because they are exactly the same. They're like topics that seem basic, but it's not. Mm-hmm. It's hard until you actually know how to do it.
Yeah,
so
and
they're very popular.
A friend of mine, he said this with all the good meaning in the world. He said, Bryan, your blog posts are a bit like Stack Overflow. There's a problem and there's an answer. And I went, yeah, they are. That's it. There's, it's one thing at a time. And that's, again, it's what I enjoy. That's my style. Sorry, Niels, were you were going to look up something? I'm sorry, were you?
Yeah. So organic search for my personal website is 83%, and then direct is 9%, and there's referrals and social much smaller bits.
Yeah. Twitter for me, of let's say 90,000 page views a month, Twitter might be 200 or 300 or something. You know, it's tiny. Well, but again, that's taking into account that a lot of people are blocking the referrers as well. I actually found an interesting thing with, I had Google Analytics running side by side with the blog, sorry, with the analytics I get from Netlify. I would trust the analytics from Netlify because it's the content loaded off of their servers. So in a given month, let's say I was getting 100,000 page views on Netlify, Google Analytics might show 40,000. So there, 60,000 are just unaccounted for, lost to script blockers, ad blockers, tracking blockers. You know, so it's one of those interesting ones that, you know, you even when you have a blog, unless you're getting the raw data from your hosting company, you won't really know the traffic you're getting. Which is again a good reason to go with something like Netlify, because you can get at those raw data. Anybody else have thoughts, comments, suggestions? You know, again, I was hoping this to be interactive and help each other out. Quiet bunch. Kev, have you got any other suggestions from your own blog?
Not really. I pretty much just blog like things which I get stuck on, and then the same. Like, I don't really kind of publicize it on Twitter or anything else like that. I just, most of it just gets organic searches.
Yeah.
So yeah, I actually just opened up Google Analytics, which just told me that my property is going to like kind of expire because the Google Analytics for which I probably should update. But yeah, like I try to look at it's kind of hard to look at like kind of referrals of stuff. So it's like, it doesn't really show you anything because everybody just blocks sending that stuff across, don't they? So yeah, they're pretty much all unknown, except for like some random CDN sites and stuff, which is weird. Yeah. And then all the organic searches, which I can see, are literally not set or not provided.
Yeah. There's an enormous amount of blocking. I mean, I use an ad blocker too, of course, but it becomes a challenge. I know a few bloggers who rely on advertising for their, you know, part of their income, and they're struggling to find a balance between an appropriate number of ads and keeping the content readable. And at one point, they went the wrong way. You know, there was a paragraph in a video, and, you know, sort of it just became unreadable. I turned off the ad blocker to have a look, and I turned it right back on and said to him, "Hey man, I wouldn't stay on your site." But you know, with diminishing views of the ads, he needs more ads because there's fewer people letting the ads through. So then he's got more ads for those fewer people. So it's then driving people to ad blockers.
Yeah, it's like what's that? The main blog site where people post stuff on. That one has like paywalls and stuff like that, or sign up walls and things like that, which are just really annoying, I find, because I literally just Google it, hit that, and just close it, and then go somewhere else.
Is that a choice of the blogger, or is that a choice of the provider?
That's the provider. Well, I guess the provider, because the provider's providing the services, but they want you to sign up, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
What's it called?
I think it's Medium you're referring
Medium. Yeah. Which is really nice.
Yeah, because with that, it's you can have so many, you can like view so many blog posts per month without like signing up and paying for like a pro plan or whatever it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I do think it seems to only be certain blogs. I don't know if blogs can kind of opt into being like premium ones or something. But also I've noticed as well is it tends to be quite easily got round. Like in terms of if you just get like go into like the incognito tab or whatever, it's like quite easily fooled. But
yeah.
But that's another
Yeah.
reason, again, to have control of your content and not be reliant on some other provider. So, don't start on one of those, start on your own. And if you would choose to abandon it, it's been a bit more work to get going. But if you choose to continue, you don't have to then backtrack and pull your content from somewhere else or worry about your reputation being split between two places or them changing their terms of service and putting everything behind a paywall. You're most likely signing away a bunch of rights, and maybe they're a problem, maybe they're not, but you simply have lost control.